Okay, so this is an example of an LAT, and a lot of you asked me to go through kind of the process of how I grade this. So this is just kind of very similar to lots of the ones that I saw. So I put the prompt up here. So remember, for the prompt, we're looking at how imagery connects to purpose. So the purpose is the message. So we're looking to see how this writer is telling me about Bradbury's use of imagery and making sure they connect that imagery to the message. So when I look, the prompt is right, or the thesis is right here. Bradbury relies heavily on imagery to develop the message of his story using descriptive language to create contrast and create a sense of environment. So the biggest problem here is that we're missing, um, so if that's their claim, right, we're missing the link to the message. We don't know what the message is. So that's going to cause us a lot of problems later on. So remember it's CER, so we're looking for claim, evidence, reasoning. So there's our claim, and it's not fully developed. So that's a ding right there. Bradbury describes things like the concrete and the temperature of the air to create a sense of stillness and peace. This was then contrasted by Bradbury's describing of how walking through the empty streets was not unequal to walking through a graveyard. This is good evidence. Like it's not bad evidence here. The homes, the dark windows, the gray phantoms inside, right? So there's our evidence. By describing these seemingly unimportant aspects, Bradbury is telling us that society is dull and conforming. Nobody truly knows what's going on. Excellent. So this is excellent reasoning, right? But the problem is we don't have a claim that it really can link back to. The main character, Mr. Leonard Mean, is shown not to conform. He is playful, curious, and positive. You know, that's reasoning right there. There's a little bit of context. What I would say here is you have to tell me how do you know these things? You know, it's not fully answered. As he's on his walk, he whispers to the homes. There's context right there. So that's reasoning. Um, there's some evidence here. This is the channels part, and then Mr. Mead picking up leaves, examining their patterns. That's a lot of chunk of evidence. That's not super helpful because we're assuming that the reader's gonna know what this means. So this is linking back to this reasoning that Mr. Mean is different. He's not dull and he appreciates the little things. And then there's more context for the next piece of evidence. So in terms of evidence and reasoning, this isn't bad. Um, so we have here's evidence here with Mr. Mead is just walking, right? And now we have to look at the other side. The police car finds strangeness in the fact. So that's context. Um, and in this scene, we receive more emphasis on the zombie-like nature of the people around him. It becomes a little redundant. So we're jumping back and forth here, which is going to cause us some problems. So this is one of those things where I say there's word vomit because we're back to the evidence. That's the graveyard imagery, and that's what's going on right here. So it's kind of just disjointed and jumbled. The people around Mr. Mead are depressed, bored, and uninterested. I would say here that's more like context, and then you need a good, you know, how do you know? Um, so here we have a claim. Bradbury uses descriptors like these to tell us that without individuality, the world is dull and boring and we must be ourselves. But this is like your conclusion. This should have been back up at the beginning. So, however, because in MCAP we're looking where we can give you points and not take away, even though we don't have a claim as our first sentence, it's at the end and the points link us down to it. So it is kind of there. So when we go and look at this rubric now, you know, just from my years of grading, we know it's not a 4. Not having a, if you don't have a clear claim, you really can't get higher than a 2. And even though the claim's at the bottom, we're kind of struggling because the first 99% of what we're reading, we don't know where we're going with it. So you're not going to get a 3 or 4 if you don't have a clear claim. So when we look at 2, it says demonstrates basic understanding. I would say this demonstrates more than a basic understanding for that part. So, that gives them some plus. They definitely, the 1 says limited. It's definitely not limited understanding. Examines and conveys somewhat accurate ideas, concepts, and information. I would say that it definitely is more than somewhat. So for the first 2 bullets, this person's really looking at a 3. This next bullet, the 4th bullet, develops generally clear and coherent writing, in which development, organization, and style are somewhat appropriate. I would say that they're not more than somewhat appropriate. And the ideas in the last bullet, the ideas are somewhat clear and logical and basic connections. So unfortunately, the not having the claim pops them at a 1. So if we look at these bullets, so for this first bullet here, you're going to be in the 3 category because it is, I see that you know what this text is about. You're looking deeper into it. That's a 3. The writing style is going to be at a 2, okay? And the idea is somewhat clear and logical. Unfortunately, because of that lack of claim, and we don't know what we're doing, and we have some redundancy with the graveyard stuff at the beginning and the end, we go into this limited. So if we have 2 3s, a 2, and a 1, overall that puts us in the 2 category. So that's how this person scored a 2. Now, if we look at written conventions, this person's at a 3. And most of the times at your age level, I would expect you to have a 3. What's going to put you below a 3 here is if you have fragments or run-ons. Okay, so I hope this gives you a little help into how LATs are graded.